All right, let's dive in. We're tackling steep and shallow golf swings today.
Some good.
You sent over this webinar with Terry and Mike, these golf instructors,
Hmm?
and really wanted to get to the bottom of like what actually impacts your swing.
Yeah,
And get ready because they cover some really interesting stuff.
definitely.
They go into how your body, your grip, even like your height can affect whether your swing is steep or shallow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how they start right from the setup.
Oh, interesting.
Grip, posture, where the ball is, your aim, alignment.
Yeah.
It's like they really hammer home how crucial that foundation is for everything else.
Makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
If your base is off, the rest of your swing's probably going to be a mess.
Oh, absolutely. Mike even says, if you can get set up properly, you have a good chance to swing the club properly.
Okay, I like that.
And then when they get into grip styles,
Okay.
specifically like over and under grips,
Yeah.
it's like they're showing you how to choose a track for your club head.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So, like, are you going for the steep track or the shallow one?
Exactly. And Terry, he's done a ton of research, and
Okay.
he shows that if you got an over grip,
Hey.
your backswing tends to be steeper
Okay.
and your downswing shallower.
Gotcha.
Guys like Victor Hovland, Chris Kirk, those are great examples.
Mhm.
But with an under grip, it's the opposite.
Go ahead.
Shallower backswing, steeper downswing.
Okay.
You see that with like Rory McIlroy, Adam Stat.
That's so interesting. So my grip is like setting the path from the very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
What about like where I put the ball? Does that come into play too?
Absolutely. Mike explains how if you play the ball further back in your stance,
Okay.
it encourages a swing path that goes more to the right,
Okay.
vice versa, of
Yeah.
course. But he's really clear. It's not just ball position and isolation.
Gotcha.
You got to adjust your stance, open or close,
Mhm.
to match where that ball is.
Okay.
So everything moves together smooth and all.
So like finding that harmony, everything flowing together.
Exactly. And then they bring in another factor, like flexibility.
Oh,
Some golfers, they're like Gumby out there, so flexible.
yeah, guys like Ricky Fowler, Sergio Garcia come to mind.
Exactly. They're what you call hypermobile.
Okay.
They can get so much separation between parts of their body,
Okay.
which often gives them a shallower attack angle.
Interesting.
But Mike, he makes this point that these super flexible golfers,
Yeah.
they might actually do better opening their stance up a bit,
Really?
especially hitting out of the rough.
Wow.
Helps them steepen that attack angle,
Okay.
get more control.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the other side, golfers who aren't as flexible.
Mm-hmm.
They might need a more closed stance to get that shallower angle.
So it's like you can't just copy someone else's swing.
Yep.
You have to like think about your own flexibility.
Exactly. And it's not just flexibility. They get into your build,
Okay.
what they call anthropometrics.
So like how tall I am, wingspan, that kind of thing.
You got it. They found that if your arms are longer than your height,
Okay.
more likely to have an upright swing.
Interesting.
Shorter arms usually leads to a flatter swing.
Okay.
And the length of your forearms matters too.
Really?
Longer forearms can mean a steeper attack angle,
Wow.
while shorter ones, well, they tend towards a shallower one.
So we're all like kind of predisposed to swing a certain way based on our body.
Seems that way. They bring up Justin Thomas. He's got those really long forearms,
Mhm.
and that naturally makes his swing steeper,
Oh,
even though he's technically an under golfer.
interesting.
It's like his body's kind of overriding his grip style there.
I see.
And they contrast that with Xander Schauffele, who
Yeah.
has to like work a bit harder to adjust his swing because of his build.
So like some guys have a natural advantage just from how they're built.
Seems like it. And talking about unique swings, they get into Scotty Scheffler.
Oh yeah, his swing is fascinating. What did they have to say about him?
Well, they point out, like, on paper,
Okay.
a lot of things about his setup should lead to a super steep swing.
Okay.
He's a front post golfer, has an on-top grip,
Hmm.
and potentially longer forearms.
Right, but he manages to shallow it out somehow.
Right.
How does he do that?
That's the million-dollar question. It's like he creates so much power pushing up through the ball that he can override all those other factors.
Wow.
You can actually see him lifting his pelvis through the ball.
Really?
Like he's using that upward force to shallow out his attack angle.
So he's working with his natural tendencies using them to his advantage.
That's what it looks like. They call this finding your dynamic matchup.
Okay.
And it's a key concept they keep coming back to.
Dynamic matchup. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean?
It's all about matching your swing style to your body's natural movements. Instead of trying to force yourself into a mold that doesn't fit,
Yeah.
you find a way to move, efficiently, powerfully,
Yeah.
based on how your body's built
Right.
and how you naturally swing.
So instead of trying to be someone else on the course,
Yeah.
you figure out how to be like the best version of yourself.
Exactly. And they give it this really interesting example of why forcing an unnatural swing can be a problem.
Okay, I'm listening.
They talk about golfers who lean way to the right trying to hit the ball higher.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Looks so awkward.
Right. Well, they explain that often throws those golfers off balance,
Mhm.
and then they have to compensate with all these weird movements that mess up their swing.
Right, so they're like fighting their own body.
Yeah, instead of working with it.
So what's the alternative? How do we find that like dynamic matchup swing more naturally?
Well, they bring up this cool thing called sway gap.
Sway gap. What's that?
Basically, it measures the distance between your upper and lower body
Okay.
at different points in your swing.
Mm.
And apparently, it can tell you a lot about your swing direction, attack angle, all that.
All right, that sounds pretty technical.
Yeah.
So how does it work?
So they point out that under golfers, they tend to have a larger sway gap
Okay.
because their upper body shifts more to the trail side, creates space for their hand path.
Mm-hmm.
They use Tyrrell Hatton as a great example.
Okay.
Over golfers, though, they usually have a smaller sway gap
Gotcha.
because they rely more on that forward press and upward push to shallow out their angle. Think Rory McIlroy.
Yep. Okay.
Their swings, they look completely different,
Yeah.
but both are super effective because they're working within their dynamic matchup.
So it's not about forcing a specific number.
Oh, no.
It's about understanding how your sway gap fits with your overall style and profile.
Right. And they make this really important point.
Okay.
Make sure your sway gap is dynamic,
Okay.
meaning it should change throughout your swing, not be held in one place.
Right.
They even warn against trying to shallow out your angle by just hanging back on your heels,
Oh.
because that would feel super awkward and probably wouldn't work too well.
Right. Like trying to hit a baseball standing on one leg.
Exactly.
You're fighting against your body.
You're fighting your body.
So how do we achieve that dynamic sway gap then?
Yeah.
Is it just something that happens,
Mm.
or are there like drills we can do?
They don't get into specific drills,
Okay.
but they do stress finding that balance between shifting your weight and staying in control.
Okay.
Guys like Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler,
Mm-hmm.
they've mastered it.
Yeah.
They use their sway gaps to generate crazy power,
Wow.
but they stay balanced in control the whole time.
And it's so cool to see how they both have these very different styles.
Yeah.
But they're both killing it.
Mm-hmm.
Really proves the point. There's no one right way to swing.
Exactly. It's all about what works for you.
They also mentioned like how much effort you put in can impact your sway gap.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain that a little more?
So they point out the more effort you put in, the bigger your sway gap tends to be.
Okay.
Because you're generating more force, which naturally leads to more separation between your upper and lower body.
So like a big driver swing will probably have a larger sway gap than a soft chip shot.
Exactly. They even talked about how your intention,
Okay.
the type of shot you're going for,
Yeah.
can also affect your sway gap.
So like if I'm trying to hit a low punch shot,
Mm.
my sway gap's probably going to be smaller than if I'm going for a high towering drive.
Exactly. It all comes back to that dynamic matchup,
Right.
finding the right movements and adjustments that work for you.
This is fascinating. And speaking of different bodies,
Yeah.
they had some interesting stuff about how sway gap can change as you grow.
Oh, especially with junior golfers.
Wait, so kids have different sway gaps than adults?
Well, they explain the magnitude of the sway gap will naturally increase as a young golfer's body grows. Like a tree, as it gets taller, its branches spread wider.
I love that analogy. So as junior golfers get bigger and stronger, their sway gaps get bigger too.
Precisely. But they really emphasize how crucial it is for, coaches and parents
Yeah.
to understand how these changes in size can mess with a young golfer's swing mechanics.
Okay.
They need to be aware of how that sway gap is evolving and make adjustments.
So it's not just letting kids grow into their swings.
No.
It's about actively guiding them,
Yeah.
helping them develop a swing that works with their changing body.
Exactly. And they mentioned some junior golfers might need more frequent adjustments to their setup and swing, especially during growth spurts.
Oh, wow.
Kind of like fine-tuning a race car to keep it running at its best.
This is all making so much sense. So to recap what we've learned about sway gap,
Yeah.
the dynamic measurement can tell us a lot about our swing path and attack angle.
Right.
Under and over golfers, they tend to have different sway gap patterns.
Yeah.
And the effort we put in, even the type of shot we're trying to hit, can affect it. And it's super important to consider how sway gap evolves in junior golfers as their bodies grow.
Absolutely. The bottom line is, just like everything else in golf,
Yeah.
it's about understanding your individual blueprint,
Right.
finding what works best for you.
I'm feeling a lot more knowledgeable about sway gap now,
Me too.
but Terry and Mike didn't stop there.
Oh, no.
They had a bunch of practical tips about how to actually improve your swing based on your style and tendencies.
Oh, yeah. They got really practical in the last part.
So let's jump right into that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've talked about how grip, flexibility, even our body type can impact whether our swing is steep or shallow.
Right.
And we touched on this dynamic matchup idea,
Yeah.
which is all about making sure our swing works with our body, not against it.
Right.
But how do we actually figure out what our dynamic matchup is?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
They actually have a whole system for, like, categorizing different golf swings based on grip style and posture.
Wow.
They call it profiling.
Interesting.
It's kind of like a personality test for your swing.
Okay, I'm totally game for a golf swing personality test. What are the different profiles?
Well, they break it down into 9 different profiles.
Okay.
But to keep things simple, let's focus on the 2 extremes.
Okay, sounds good.
On one end, you've got the front post golfer with an on-top grip.
Gotcha.
This is someone who sets up with their weight more on their toes
Okay.
and their hands ahead of the club head.
So like Scotty Scheffler.
Exactly. He's like the ultimate front post on top guy.
Yeah.
Then, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the rear post golfer with an under grip.
Okay.
This golfer sets up with their weight more on their heels
Mm-hmm.
and their hands behind the club head.
That sounds like a classic stack and tilt setup.
You got it. And then, of course, there are variations between those 2 extremes.
Right.
But the point is, by understanding your profile,
Yeah.
you can start making adjustments specific to your needs.
Okay.
It's all about working with your body, not against it.
So instead of trying to copy someone else's swing,
Right?
you figure out how to make your own swing the best it can be.
Exactly. And that's where those individual measurements, like sway gap, come in.
Okay.
They can give you clues about how your body's moving
Right.
and where you might need to adjust based on your profile.
Okay, let's talk more about sway gap because I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it.
Sure.
Remind me again what it is and why it matters.
So sway gap is simply the distance between your upper body and your lower body at different points in your swing.
Okay.
It changes throughout your swing.
Correct.
And it can tell you a lot about your swing path and the angle you're hitting the ball.
And we talked about how under golfers
Right.
typically have a larger sway gap than over golfers, right?
Right.
Under golfers tend to have more lateral movement in their upper body,
Yeah.
which creates that bigger sway gap.
Mm-hmm.
Think back to Terrell Hatton.
Yeah.
He's a classic example of an under golfer with a pretty significant sway gap.
Classic example.
And then Rory McIlroy, with his overgrip, usually has a smaller sway gap.
Exactly. Their swings look totally different.
Yeah.
But both are incredibly effective
Yeah.
because they're working within their own dynamic matchup.
So it's not about trying to force a specific sway gap number.
Nope.
It's about understanding how your sway gap relates to your overall swing style and profile.
Right.
Okay.
And they make a really important point about making sure your sway gap is dynamic,
Okay.
meaning it should change naturally throughout your swing, not held in a fixed position.
Okay.
They even warn against trying to shallow out your attack angle by simply hanging back on your heels.
Yeah, because that would feel really awkward
Yeah.
and probably wouldn't work very well.
Exactly. It's like trying to hit a baseball while standing on one leg.
Yeah.
You're fighting against your body's natural movement.
So how do we achieve that dynamic sway gap?
Right.
Is it just something that happens naturally?
Well,
Are there drills we can do?
they don't really get into specific drills, but they emphasize the importance of finding that balance between shifting your weight
Okay.
and maintaining control. Guys like Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler,
Right, yeah.
great examples.
Yeah.
They've mastered this.
Right.
They use their sway gaps to generate incredible power
Wow.
while still staying balanced and in control.
It's so cool to see how they both have very different swing styles.
Yeah.
But they're both incredibly successful.
Mm-hmm.
really drives home the point. There's no one right way to swing a golf club.
Absolutely. It's all about finding what works best for you.
They also mentioned how much effort you put into your swing can impact your sway gap.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. They
Okay.
point out that the more effort you put into your swing,
Mm-hmm.
the larger your sway gap will tend to be. That's
Okay.
because you're generating more force,
Yeah.
which naturally leads to greater separation between your upper and lower body.
So like a big, powerful driver swing will probably have a larger sway gap than a soft chip shot.
Exactly. And they even talk about how your intention, the
Yeah.
type of shot you're trying to hit,
Yeah.
can influence your sway gap as well.
So if I'm trying to hit a low punch shot,
Mm-hmm.
my sway gap will probably be smaller than if I'm going for a high towering drive.
Exactly. It all ties back to that dynamic matchup idea.
Right.
Finding the right movements and adjustments that work with your body and your intentions.
This is fascinating stuff.
Mhm.
And speaking of different bodies,
Yeah.
they also had some interesting insights about how sway gap can change as a golfer grows,
Right.
especially with junior golfers.
They emphasize that the magnitude of the sway gap will naturally increase as a young golfer's body grows.
Okay.
It's like a tree.
Yeah.
As it grows taller,
Mhm.
its branches naturally spread wider.
I love that analogy.
Mm-hmm.
So as junior golfers get bigger and stronger,
Yeah,
their sway gaps will naturally get bigger too.
precisely. But they stress that it's crucial for coaches and parents
Yeah.
to understand how these changes in size can impact a young golfer's swing mechanics. They need to be aware of how the sway gap is evolving and make adjustments accordingly.
So it's not just about letting kids grow into their swings.
No.
It's about actively guiding them,
Yeah.
helping them develop a swing that works with their changing bodies.
Exactly. And they mentioned that some junior golfers might need more frequent adjustments to their setup and swing
Okay.
as they go through growth spurts.
Wow.
Kind of like fine-tuning a race car to keep it running at peak performance.
This is all making so much sense now.
Yeah.
So to recap what we've learned about sway gap so far,
Mm-hmm.
it's a dynamic measurement that can tell us a lot about our swing path and attack angle.
Right.
Under and over, golfers tend to have different sway gap patterns. And the amount of effort we put into our swing,
Yeah,
and even the type of shot we're trying to hit, can affect it.
definitely.
And it's especially important to consider how sway gap evolves in junior golfers as their bodies grow and change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, just like with everything else in golf, it's all about understanding your individual blueprint and finding what works best for you.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a lot more well-informed about sway gap now.
Me too.
But Terry and Mike didn't stop there.
Oh, no.
They had a whole bunch of practical tips to share about how to actually improve your swing
Right.
based on your individual style and tendencies.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get really practical in the last part of the webinar.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground about swing styles, body types, and that whole dynamic matchup concept.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
But I'm ready for some, actionable advice.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of practical tips did Terry and Mike give for actually improving our swings?
One of the biggest things they stressed was respecting your natural body movements.
Okay.
They said trying to force yourself into a swing that doesn't feel natural
Yeah.
can cause all sorts of problems like inconsistency, loss of power, even injuries.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Like we've been talking about how everyone's built differently.
So it stands to reason our swings are going to be different too.
Exactly. They even brought up Justin Thomas as an example.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about his long forearms making his swing naturally steep?
Right.
Well, they said instead of trying to completely change his swing path, which would feel really forced, he's found ways to adjust other things,
Okay.
like his grip, his posture, ball position,
Okay.
to optimize his swing within his natural style.
So it's not about trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
No.
It's about finding ways to make that square peg work as efficiently as possible.
Exactly. They also talked about understanding the cause and effect of different swing elements.
Okay.
Like if you're trying to hit a draw, but you keep fading the ball,
Yeah.
it's crucial to figure out what's causing that fade.
Okay.
Is it your grip, your stance, how you're shifting your weight?
So it's like detective work.
Yeah,
You got to investigate the clues to solve the mystery of the fade.
exactly. They also warned against making big changes based on one bad shot or a bad round.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah.
I hit one bad shot, and suddenly I'm trying to change everything.
It's easy to overreact
Yeah.
and start tinkering, but that usually just makes things worse.
Right. Yeah.
They emphasized patience and consistency,
Yep.
said it's much better to make small, incremental changes and
Yeah.
practice those till they become second nature.
I like that approach.
Yeah.
Slow and steady wins the race, right?
Right, exactly.
Speaking of, well, not exactly slow and steady,
Mm-hmm.
but technology.
Yeah.
They talked about how things like launch monitors and 3D motion capture
Yeah.
can help you improve your swing.
It's like having X-ray vision for your swing.
Right.
You can see all these details you'd never see with just your eyes.
Yeah.
And then you can use that data to pinpoint like what you need to work on.
It's like getting a personalized blueprint.
Yeah.
But they said it's important not to get too reliant on tech, right?
Right,
Like it's a tool, not a crutch. It can be super helpful.
Yeah.
But you still got to develop your own feel and intuition.
Absolutely.
So like finding that balance between the data and what feels right.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
What about you? What were some of your biggest takeaways from this whole deep dive?
I think for me, it was just how much they emphasized individualization.
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to the swing.
Right.
We all have different bodies, strengths, weaknesses, natural tendencies. The key is to figure out what works for you and
Yeah.
build your swing around that.
Trying to be someone else on the golf course is like a recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
And it's so refreshing to hear these like top instructors saying it's okay to have a unique swing.
Oh, yeah, totally.
They also made a good point about not getting too caught up in hitting perfect shots all the time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Like, golf is a game of misses.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the best way to get better is to just focus on being consistent.
Absolutely.
So I think we've pretty much covered everything from Terry and Mike's webinar.
Yeah, I think we got it all.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about the golf swing
Me too.
and what I need to do to, like, improve my own game.
Yeah.
Huge thanks to you for helping me break it all down.
My pleasure.
And, of course, thanks to you out there listening for sharing this webinar and inspiring this deep dive.
Yeah.
Hopefully you learned a few things, too.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're even feeling inspired to get out there and work on your own dynamic matchup.
Definitely.
Until next time, happy golfing.